One of the things about the last few weeks, months, is that this has definitely been a test of everyone. There is a testing that James writes about that we all should expect, and a testing that we have to pass if we're going to have any hope of eternity, and that is a testing of our faith. This morning we're going to be looking at the word faith as it occurs in 1st and 2nd Timothy. Paul's writing to a young man who's a preacher. He's going to be faced with a lot of different trials. He's going to be faced with a lot of different challenges in his ministry. And so Paul's going to talk about faith. As a matter of fact, Paul's going to mention the word faith in some form or another 24 times in the books of 1st and 2nd Timothy. The word faith is going to be in every single chapter in 1st and 2nd Timothy. And when you consider the fact that the Greek word for faith is also the same root word for believe, belief, believing, believer, is pistuo or pistis, depending on if it's noun or verb, it occurs 37 times in those two books. Now, whenever you're reading the Bible and you notice that something gets repeated, it's repeated on purpose. It's God's way of saying, did you get it? Are you listening? And because he talks about it so much here, we're going to be looking at that word faith, because you and I, our faith is being tested in this world. And I'm not talking just about the quarantine. I'm not talking just about the riots and the civil racial unrest. I'm talking about life in general. The world is always trying to get our attention off of Jesus and onto the world. And the word faith simply means believe, to trust. And when you think about it, faith is perhaps one of the most important facets of our life. The Hebrew writer said, without faith it's impossible to please God. Jesus said, unless you believe, that's another form of the word faith, unless you believe that I am He, you shall die in your sins. And in Mark 16:16, Jesus said, he who believes and is baptized shall be saved. So believe what? Believe what? Believe that He is the Son of God. That's the statement that was made with the Ethiopian eunuch. The eunuch heard about Jesus. He apparently had heard about baptism as well, because as they're driving along, he asks Philip, here's water. What would prevent me from being baptized? Philip said, if you believe, you may. I believe that Jesus is Christ, the Son of God. That faith has to be a part of our lives. It has to be a living, active thing. It has to be something that we never let go of. As Paul writes to Timothy, he's going to talk about faith in chapter 1, verse 15, that is unfeigned. That means it's not faked. Have you ever faked something? You're talking to somebody and they're talking about a topic and you act interested when you're not interested. You ever do that? Kind of like right now? Okay? Have you ever acted like you liked something that somebody served you and you really didn't like it? We went out to Tennessee, eastern Tennessee one time to visit my brother. He'd gotten married. His wife had just had a baby. So we went to see them. And we went up into an area that's surrounding that town. It's called Poor Valley. And my brother told us this is Poor Valley. It's aptly named. And we got to this house, and it's one of my sister-in-law's relatives. And she asked my dad if he wanted a cup of coffee. He said, sure. When she left to get the coffee, my brother leaned over to my mom. He says, watch Dad. Because they rebrew their coffee grounds. It gets pretty strong. And he said, sometimes you can put a fork in it and it'll stand up in the coffee. It's about that strong. So this lady brings the coffee out. I watched my dad take that cup of coffee and take a sip. And she said, "How is it?" He says, "It's just fine. Thank you." She said, "Good." And she left to go back to the kitchen for something. And as soon as she left the room, my dad took that cup of coffee and over the edge of the porch it went. She came out. She said, "Oh, you've already finished it off. Would you like some more?" He said, "No, thank you. That's enough." That is feigned. That's faked. Done to be polite, but it's still fake. But when it comes to faith, the Apostle Paul said this faith of ours cannot be faked. As a matter of fact, he will tie in unfake faith and the idea of our conscience being involved as well. 3 different times. Chapter 1, verse 15, verse 19, chapter 3, verse 9, in 2 Timothy 1, verse 5. He's going to link our conscience and faith together. That this has to be something that's from our heart. It's got to be something we really, really do believe in. And since it's so important, it just makes sense that this is something that Satan would attack. And Satan does attack our faith. In 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 4, he said, "Don't pay attention to myths and endless genealogies that give rise to speculations rather than furthering the administration of God, which is by faith." You know, Satan wants to get our attention off of Jesus Christ. So what does he do? He offers us lots of different topics. Now, admit this. How many of you have ever gotten onto Facebook and then before you knew it, you had spent 30 or 45 minutes in Facebook because you go from one person to another person to another person, and then you've got these notifications of news things in there, and then you got these other notifications where somebody's commented on something you did or they reacted to something you did. So you want to go back, okay, did they like it? You know, how many likes did I get? How many hearts did I get? Oh, I got a frowny face. I'm not happy now. And there's videos, all sorts of videos. I recently, there's a biblical scholar that passed away, and I had heard him in person, very impressed with him, and I found myself going from video to video of his. Now I'm looking at my watch, I thought, wow, I've been on it this long? And on Sunday, my watch tells me how long I was on the phone, and I look at it and say, "You're a liar. I wasn't on the phone. I wasn't on my phone that." Yeah, I was. Satan's going to use lots of things. Speculations, controversial questions. Why? He wants to get our eyes off of our faith in Jesus. In 2 Timothy 2, verse 18, there are people that are going to tell lies. They're going to tell us there is no resurrection, or the resurrection's already happened, to try to get people to lose their faith. He's going to tell us in chapter 5, verse 8, that not providing for one's own family is really a violation of your faith. He's going to talk about sensuality will interrupt our attention to faith. In chapter 6, verses 10 and 11, if you're going to pursue after money, the end result is it's going to take you away from your faith. You're even going to make a shipwreck of your faith. Has anyone here ever been shipwrecked? Virgil's been shipwrecked. I won't ask Virgil to recount the incident, but here's what I imagine when I think of being shipwrecked. And I compare shipwreck to flying in an airplane. If I'm driving along in my car and the engine sputters and dies, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull off the road, and if I can't get it started and nobody's coming by, I'm going to walk for help. If you're in a ship that gets shipwrecked, you're not going to pull over to the side and go walk for help, are you? You are stuck in the middle of nowhere. And I'm not going to talk about planes, never mind. Shipwreck of faith. When you shipwreck your faith, did you know you have nowhere else to go? The Apostle Paul, in the first 3 chapters of Romans, spells out very clearly that this world cannot provide the answer to how to get to the next world. He says the Jews, they had every advantage. God chose them. God spoke to them. God gave them his laws. And what did they do? They ignored his laws. They turned away from him. They turned to idols. They treated one another horribly. Okay, then you got the Gentile world. God doesn't choose them. God does not give them laws. So they are left to make their own laws. You know what they did? I'm going to write our own laws. I got them all written down there. And then I violated those laws. He said they were a law unto themselves. They couldn't keep it. The world doesn't have an answer to what we need to know about the next life. So if you make a shipwreck of your faith, you're in the middle of a violent ocean. And there's nowhere to go but down. Satan uses a lot of things to get our eyes off of Jesus. And perhaps one of the strongest examples of that was Peter when he's walking on the water. He's walking on the water to Jesus, but then he sees the wind and waves. He takes his eyes off Jesus. And that's exactly what Satan tries to get us to do, to take our eyes off Christ in our lives so that we'll lose it. We can't afford that. The Apostle Paul is going to tell Timothy what he needs to do with his faith. In chapter 1, again, verse 4, he talks about these things are from God. The administration of God, which is from faith. God's making provisions for you and me. And he's going to tell us that faith is part of our goal there in verse 5. In chapter 1, verse 19, one of the things we have to do with our faith is just keep it. Keep it. You know, sometimes we want to keep improving things, don't we? You buy a house, what's one of the first things you do? I'm going to change the kitchen counter. I don't like this. We try to improve everything, don't we? When we get hold of it, somebody gives us something, we're going to repaint it. You get somebody who moves into a house, it's all painted, they say, oh, I don't like that color, or oh, I'm going to put up wallpaper. And you got another person moves into a house that's got wallpaper. Wallpaper? Strip that off. Can't stand it. We got to change everything. But Paul's telling us we have to keep the faith. God's delivered us something perfect. His Son, Jesus Christ. He's given us someone that we can look to and believe in and believe every word he ever said and follow every step he took and know that we're going to end up with God. In chapter 3, verse 9, he's going to tell Timothy, you've got to hold fast your faith. You know, you just can't set it aside. You've got to hang on to this. Someone's going to want to take it away from you. Carol told me that her family used to live on Midway Island. Her dad was in the Navy. Midway is a really tiny place. And it is not at the end of the world, but you can see the end of the world from Midway. They don't get supplies in just very often for the families that live there. And they would get things that would be brought into the store, and everybody knew when everything was coming in, and they would be down at the store to get what they wanted and what they needed before it ran out. And she said more than just getting there fast and getting to the shelves, you had to leave somebody with the shopping cart. Because if someone's walking by looking for something and it's not on the shelf, but it's in your cart and you're not there, it's coming out of your cart and it's going into theirs. You've got to guard it. Keep it. We need to regard our faith the same way. Satan's not going to just say, oh, well, they got faith, I guess I don't touch them. No, he's going to try to take it away from you. He's going to take a loved one from you. He's going to take your job away. He's going to make life hard for you to try to take away your faith in Jesus Christ. That Jesus has got you covered. He's going to try to get you to not believe that. Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy 6, verse 11, we have to pursue faith. Verse 12, we have to fight for faith. You know, if you're going to get something, you have to fight for it if it's worthwhile. You may have to run after it. It's not going to be easy. But we have to do that. That faith, according to 2 Timothy 4, verse 6, nourishes us. And when you look at our Christian lives, he says, you know, we have a goal. The goal of our instruction is this. First of all, love from a pure heart, a good conscience, and sincere faith. The ultimate goal is love, but you achieve love by your faith, by your conscience. Faith is so important in our lives, and keeping it in the face of all challenges is so important, not only for us, but for others. Some of you may have heard of a man named John Clayton. John Clayton was born into a family that was atheist. He said, I grew up an atheist for the same reason that some of you grow up Christian, because I was raised in that kind of family. He went to a college where almost all the professors were atheists. But he got interested in this girl named Phyllis. And this girl named Phyllis was a member of the Church of Christ in that city. And he started dating her, and he tried to make Phyllis think like him. He said she had faith in Jesus Christ, and he said, I would spend every opportunity to try to get her to question her faith, to doubt it. And he said, I would ask her questions that she could not answer. And she would tell me, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe somebody else does. But I still believe. And no matter what he did, he could not shake her faith. And when he went to college, he was talking to the professors because he had studied the Bible, and he was trying to show the Bible contradicted itself and was false. And every time he questioned a professor with details, the professor failed to produce proof the Bible actually contradicted itself or was wrong. He said one professor was talking about Noah and the ark. He said, yeah, he's supposed to bring 2 of every animal. Can you imagine that? 2 Chihuahuas, 2 Pekingese, 2 German Shepherds, 2 Dalmatians, 2 Boston Terriers. Can you imagine all of that? And John Clayton said, I read the Bible, and it said he was to bring 2 of every kind. He said, I asked the professor, is there anything you've read that indicates kind means every different breed within a kind? And the professor said, well, no. He said, then when he said kind, couldn't there have been just a dog kind? If y'all watch commercials, when they sell dog food, what do they tell you? All dogs descended from what? Wolves. The professor finally admitted, well, no, it didn't say that. So he couldn't maintain that mockery of the Bible. And John Clayton said it kept happening. He's confronted with professors who couldn't explain it, and he's confronted with a young lady who couldn't answer his questions, but still he could not shake her faith. And John Clayton eventually became a Christian, a preacher, a writer, trying to lead others to Christ. Your faith will eventually overcome everything. Your faith will see you through the end. It's going to be some troubling times between now and then. But to give you an example of what faith can do, who's one of the richest people in our country? Bill Gates? He's got a little money? Okay. I want you to take a little quick imaginary trip. This is going to be the last part of our lesson. Bill Gates comes to your house. Just so you know, he's legitimate. And he says, John Sexton, I've got a check here. It's certified. It's got your name on it. It's got an amount, $10 million. Okay? John, all you've got to do is make it through this day without losing your temper, without cursing at people, and without giving up. And John says, am I going to spend the day with my wife? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Becky's a wonderful person. Okay, she's a wonderful person. John says, I can do that. John gets up the next morning. He's going to drive to work. His car won't start. Man, I just had that fixed. I paid $500 yesterday to have that fixed. It's not working. He gets somebody else to take him to work. He gets to work, and they've dumped a whole bunch of jobs on him. He goes ahead, not going to lose his temper, not going to say anything else. He leaves for lunch. While he's going to lunch, he gets robbed. They take every bit of money that's in his wallet. He gets a notification. There were some mistakes made in your mortgage, and you're going to lose your house. And John, what are you thinking of when all that happens? John's thinking about a $10 million check. Can you buy a car if you got $10 million? Okay. Can you afford to maybe get another job if you got $10 million? You think you can find another house if you got $10 million? John's thinking, and John, I'm sorry for picking on you this morning. John's thinking, it doesn't matter what happens to me today, because at the end of the day, it's a different world for me. At the end of the day, I've got everything I will ever need taken care of. That's what faith is in Jesus Christ. It does not matter what people throw at you tomorrow or today. It doesn't matter what Satan puts in your path today or tomorrow. Jesus has got your future already guaranteed. Your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life if you've given your life to Jesus. And there is a crown of life. There are rewards in heaven. There are treasures from what you've laid up waiting for you. And all you got to do is this. Say, I believe in Jesus Christ. He's God's Son. He is the one I need to follow in life. His commands are the ones I need to obey. His path is the path I need to walk. And it's all taken care of. If you and I would trust Bill Gates, we know we can trust Jesus Christ. If you've never given your life to Him, He said, if you will believe and be baptized, you'll be saved. That's it. You don't have to do any great deeds. You don't have to pre-qualify. Just do those things. Confess His name. Live the life He wants you to live. But all through it all, you can keep it up by just believing in what's there at the end of your day. If you've ever fallen away from Christ, you know that He's only a prayer away. If you need to give your life to Him this morning, if you feel like you need the prayers of the church, I want you to have this amount of faith, and that is that Jesus will forgive any and every sin if you will just ask Him. If you need to come this morning, we invite you to come as we stand and sing.